Hello everyone, welcome to Kalam program, Daily GS Mains Answer Writing. Today's question is with respect to General Studies, Paper 3 section, Economy. And the question is, account for the role that microfinance institutions can play in poverty alleviation in India. Suggest measures required or measures that can strengthen these institutions. So here we are speaking about microcredit institutions. So we need to know about what are these microcredit institutions and examples for related to the microcredit institutions and what role these microcredit institutions play in poverty alleviation in India. What is the role of microcredit institutions being in the elevation process of poverty? And with respect to the analysis section, what measures are required in order to strengthen these microcredit institutions is the question for the today's. So our answer for this question is first slide we saw discussed the answer with respect to the question with respect to the requirement of the divided into these many sections. First, we will speak about definition or introduction with respect to microcredit institutions and examples of those institutions which are involved, which are called as microcredit institutions, and role of these microcredit institutions in poverty alleviation program that we'll briefly discuss about, and what are the issues which are involved in order to suggest measures for the improvements in these microcredit institutions with respect to poverty alleviation in India. This is the overall question, and at last we'll speak about conclusion. So starting with microcredit institutions, it's a small value unsecured loans to low income individuals to finance income producing activities so as to enable them to raise their income level and improve living standards. So these institutions which can disburse such credits are called microfinance institutions. So as we spoke about the definition, here we say these are small value unsecured loans. These unsecured loans to low income individuals. Unsecured loans to low income individuals for financing income producing activities. This is called microcredit, and those institutions which give this microcredit, they are called microfinancing institutions. What are these institutions involved? Those might be regional rural banks, those might be cooperative societies or NBFCs, non-banking financial companies or money lenders. So these institutions are called microcredit financing institutions. So what these microfinance credit institutions are playing role in poverty alleviation. So that role part when we are discussing, those roles being played by these can be improving financial inclusion. So they are helping with financial inclusion. It expands the reach of formal financial system to unbanked population, thereby allowing them to start income generating activities. So they help in financing the unbanked or those who doesn't have access to banking system. So they will help in financing them and help them to get into finance generating activities. So that's it, that is related to financial inclusion. Second point is employment generation. So how these microfinancial institutions are helpful in employment generation? As we said in the definition itself, it's a small value loan being given to low income individuals in order to finance them for income producing activities. In the same way, as a result of which they can create new economic activity due to the help of this microfinance and create direct and indirect employment. So third point, improved human capital. Improved human capital. Access to microfinance opens up development processes such as financial, technical resources and training opportunities to the individuals. So human capital and standard of living improvement will also be helpful with help of microcredit institutions. So these are the 3 points which we had with respect to role of microcredit or microfinance institutions in the poverty alleviation program. Along with that, so next part, whatever the activities are being taken up, what issues are we usually find with respect? We spoke about role of microcredit institutions in poverty alleviation, then issues involved, then we come up with suggestions or So we spoke about definition, which is a small finance given to low income individuals in order to generate new economic activity and employment generation. Employment generation which is directly helpful for poverty alleviation. What are the institutions involved? That might be regional rural banks, cooperative societies, NBFCs, money lenders are the examples which you can add in the introduction part. Then coming down to the body, we speak of role of MFCs or microfinance institutions, MFIs, in poverty alleviation that might be helpful with the financial inclusion, employment generation, improved human capital. And the second part we spoke about issues involved to these developmental activities or these poverty alleviation activities. So what are the issues involved? Issues involved, first one we speak of high footprint of money lenders. What is the meaning of high footprint of money lenders? According to the estimates, currently around 25 to 40% of microcredit loans are forwarded by money lenders. So these 40% of microcredit loans forwarded by money lenders are at very high rates. So these high rates are defeating the fundamental objective of microcredit institutions, because the finance which is given for low income individuals is for development of financial activity. But if the loans are disbursed at a very high interest rate, then the economic activity might not be feasible for an individual to come out of the loop of poverty. Thereby, it is defeating the fundamental objective of microcredit institutions which are being set up. So, high interest rate is the issue. Second is consumption versus income generation. In this section, we see these loans, microcredit loans, are being used by recipients for consumption purpose mostly. Thereby, the objective of promoting income generating activities is being lost. Usually low income individuals in India, we find they try to fulfill their daily needs or their basic necessities of life rather than having an agenda or mindset of using the finances for new income generating activities. So there is a conflict between this consumption and income generation activities. So thereby again we find the defeat in the objective. Then it's a third issue is unregulated sector. Even though several institutions have been taken up by the government and RBI, still significant part of sector is being unregulated. Unregulation, then these three issues we usually find with respect to microcredit institutions which are come up with an objective, but failure on the other end is found because of these things. So what are the next section we will speak about initiatives being taken by the government in the next overall section. What are the issues involved? High footprint of money lenders. We see a very high interest rate being charged by these money lenders, which is defeating the objective of MFIs being created. There is a conflict between consumption versus income generation. Then unregulated sector makes it ineffective. What are the initiatives? Initiatives we speak of, first one is Mudra Bank. It was established as a financing and regulatory institution by Government of India. Then NBFCs, non-banking financial companies, microfinance institutions. RBI has instituted new category of NBFCs to improve regulations. Next, suggestions. In suggestions, there is a need to ensure that cheap credit is being available to MFIs. Cheap credit to MFIs to keep interest loan very low. There is a need to ensure MFIs should follow RBI mandated core for responsible lending. Responsible lending is another suggestion which can be taken into consideration. MFI's network needs to be expanded so that the low income population need not resort to money lenders and strengthen financial inclusion. So improvements in MFI network. Improvements in MFI network. And at last we come with conclusion. In conclusion, we can conclude by saying microcredit is an instrument at both. They are at social and economic policy. It is effective tool to empower the underprivileged section of society to pull them out of the poverty. So it's an effective tool which needs to be monitored and regulated at every step of the program so that its effectiveness can be improved upon. So, activities of microfinance institutions. What are the suggestions? We can say cheap credit to MFIs will help to reduce the interest rates or keep the interest rates low. Responsible lending will also make sure the objective of MFIs which is being created will not be defeated, and improved MFI network will help to reach the nook and corner of the country where the citizens of this country or some people who are unbanked or they could not be covered into the banking sector, they can also get the finance credits will be helpful overall in the objective of taking down poverty alleviation with the help of MFIs. So effective and responsible funding by the NBFC organizations or NBFC or MFI institutions is the major criteria what we can decide for the whole question. So this is about today's question. We'll meet up with new question tomorrow again.